In the hustle and bustle of life, we sometimes forget that words have tremendous power. A thoughtless word can hurt, but the right words at the right time can heal all wounds. Buddha taught that silence is the key to peace. One word of silence, a lifetime of tranquility. This is a gentle reminder of the power of silence and the importance of restraining our speech. When we learn to be silent when necessary, it is not weakness or fear, but wisdom and a mindful choice. Silence helps us not harm others and also keeps peace in our hearts. In moments of confusion, anger, or uncertainty, silence allows us to stop, reflect, and allow our hearts to find the right answer. Thank you for listening to the shares on the Letting Go, Finding Peace channel. We hope each story and message here will be a breeze for your soul. Silence, according to Buddha's teachings, is not about detachment or avoidance, but a full presence in life. It is a way to listen to ourselves and the world around us. In moments of silence, we can understand deeper things within ourselves and also easily feel the peace in life. Only by keeping silence can we truly settle and see the truth, recognizing that peace does not come from the external world, but from our own hearts. Remember that words can be a powerful tool for connecting with others, but when not controlled, they can break relationships and stir up storms in the soul. Therefore, let us learn to keep quiet, to remain silent when needed, to preserve real peace and happiness in life. In modern life, full of sounds, noise, and waves of anxiety and fatigue, we sometimes feel so tired that we long for silence, a peaceful space to find stillness in our hearts. That is when we crave silence, not merely the absence of noise, but a deep silence that helps us return to ourselves, listen to the beat of our hearts, and reconnect with the world around us more subtly and gently. This feeling is part of the healing process that Buddha taught. Silence is not just a physical state of the environment, but a spiritual practice. It is a time to calm the soul, release all worries, and allow ourselves to relax and recharge. When we find silence in our hearts, we truly feel the peace that comes from within, no longer swept away by worries about the past or fears about the future. Buddha once taught, silence is the key to peace. And when we understand the value of silence, we will feel the peace in our hearts. When we speak too much, we unintentionally create chaos in our minds and lives. Every word is not just a mere expression, but carries energy, emotions, and deep implications. Thoughtless, hurried words can stir up storms, making us feel no longer at peace. Therefore, silence is a means to stop, to halt the noisy, hurried life, and to allow the soul to be free. Just like when we face difficult, tiring, and pressuring situations, silence helps us perceive everything more clearly. Only when we know how to stop can we see the path ahead, recognize what matters in life, and begin to renew ourselves. Silence is not avoidance, but a way to self-heal, to understand ourselves more clearly, and then find freedom and happiness. In times of difficulty, we can also practice silence as a healing method. When we no longer rush to express emotional words or judgments, our hearts will have time to calm down and not be swept away by temporary emotions. That is when we can view the situation more objectively, learn to let go of what is unnecessary, and find peace in every moment. The longing for silence is not rejection of life or a feeling of loneliness, but a return to ourselves. When there is no noise around, we can feel a vast, peaceful, and beautiful world where only our souls and the world around us exist, free from worries or anxieties. It is a wonderful space to practice the Buddhist teachings on mindfulness, compassion, and purity. Silence also helps us maintain peace in relationships. In life, not everything needs to be said. Sometimes the most cherished silences are the most profound answers, the gentlest comfort we can offer each other. Silence in tense moments can reduce conflict and bring harmony in families, friendships, and communities. We simply need to listen, accept, and be forgiving instead of always arguing and justifying. Buddhism teaches that within each of us lies a silent part, an unshaken core that is not affected by external events. When we connect with that silent part, we will feel peace, stability, and an invisible strength that helps us overcome all the storms of life. Therefore, silence is not just a way to heal, but also a powerful tool to nourish mindfulness, to find serenity in the soul. Therefore, let us actively immerse ourselves in silence. Let's learn to seek moments of tranquility in our busy lives and realize that sometimes silence is the path to happiness. To find peace, we don't need to search outside. We only need to look within, listen to ourselves, and learn to keep quiet to maintain blessings. When we do so, each day will become lighter, more peaceful, and more complete. Silence, as a form of wisdom, is a profound subject that few of us truly understand. In this fast-paced and noisy life, we can easily get caught up in the whirlpool of words and endless opinions. But it is in the moments of silence that we find peace and wisdom. Silence is not avoidance, but a way to protect the soul, allowing us to listen to what has not been said, to feel the emotions that have not been expressed. It is how we come to understand ourselves and others more deeply. One beautiful morning, as you sit in the corner of a quiet cafe, outside, the streets are bustling with people passing by. You say nothing, just sit there, sipping a warm cup of coffee, listening to the gentle breeze passing through the leaves, hearing the hurried footsteps of those searching for a new day. In that moment, nothing matters but your own presence, the stillness of your soul. Thoughts and worries seem to recede, and all you need to do is listen to the surrounding space. It is in these moments that we realize that sometimes silence is the only answer we need. There is a small story about a famous healer who lived hundreds of years ago. He was not only a doctor, but also a person who brought peace to the souls of others. One day, a woman came to seek him out, telling him about her worries, her unease in life. She felt exhausted from complicated relationships, endless arguments, and pressures from work. The woman asked the healer, "Master, what should I do to find peace in my heart?" The healer did not immediately respond, but simply looked at her, then told her to sit down and be silent for a few minutes. When she remained silent, the healer said, "Silence is the first peace. When you are silent, you can listen to what has not been said, feel the emotions you have not yet recognized. Silence is not avoidance. It is a way of respecting yourself and listening to your soul." The healer's answer was not a long lecture, but encouragement for the woman to find the answer from within herself. Silence is not rejection, but acceptance. It is a process of self-awareness and understanding. In times of storm, when life presents us with challenges, sometimes we feel the need to speak, to react immediately. But it is in the moments of silence that we can restrain ourselves, avoiding hasty reactions. Silence helps us view things more clearly, allowing us to gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and the people around us. It is a wisdom that not everyone can perceive. There is another story about a young man who was always dissatisfied with his life, always chasing after new things without truly feeling the deeper value of life. One day, he met an old man, someone whom everyone respected and turned to for wisdom. The young man asked him, "How can I find peace in my heart?" The old man simply smiled and said, "Be silent, and you will see." The young man did not understand, but still followed the old man's advice, spending a few days living silently, not speaking much, not reacting hastily to things around him. And then he realized that in silence, he could feel the peace he had been searching for all along. Silence was the key to opening doors he had never noticed before. Silence, therefore, is not avoidance, but maturity in perception and understanding. It is a choice, an attitude of living to protect our own soul. It helps us slow down, live fully in the present moment, instead of racing against time and external concerns. When we are silent, we not only hear what others have not said, but we also hear the quiet voices within ourselves, things we sometimes dare not face. And in these moments of silence, we also learn to listen to life stories that we have never paid attention to. It is in the stillness that we can see more clearly the most valuable things, love, sincerity, and peace that we sometimes forget when we live too quickly. So let us learn to be silent. Silence as wisdom, silence to protect the soul, to understand ourselves, and to recognize the profound values in life. When we do this, we will find that in silence, we discover the peace we have always longed for. In our lives, words carry an invisible but incredibly powerful strength. Words can be gentle waves that soothe the heart, but they can also be sharp knives that wound the soul of others. Buddha taught that words are not just a means of communication, but a tool that can create karma, bringing either blessings or misfortune to ourselves and those around us. Words carry energy, and when we utter something, it's not just a collection of words, but an invisible source of energy. Each word, whether it's praise or criticism, can deeply affect the emotions of the listener, and if we are not careful, it can create karma for both the speaker and the listener. That is why Buddha always emphasized the importance of words and maintaining purity in our speech. Words can save a person, ease their sorrow, bring hope and peace. Sincere encouragement, heartfelt words can brighten someone's darkest day. Simple words of comfort can be a source of strength that helps others overcome challenges. In fact, we can see that many people, in their most difficult moments, have found solace and strength in the gentle words from family, friends, or even a stranger. However, just as words can heal, they can also hurt. A careless, thoughtless word can break someone's heart, cause relationships to fracture, or worse, create hatred and anger. Harsh words, criticism, or insults can pierce the heart like invisible daggers, causing deep wounds that are difficult to heal. That's why Buddha advises us to think carefully before speaking, as words not only reflect our soul, but can also impact the lives of others. Words and karma, according to Buddhist teachings, are closely related. Every word we speak is a seed planted in the garden of consciousness. If we always speak kindly, sincerely, and with love, we are planting good seeds in our hearts and in the hearts of others. These seeds will bloom into sweet fruits, bringing peace, happiness, and tranquility. But if we speak bitter words, criticize, or cause harm, we are planting bad seeds, and the karmic consequences will come at some point in our lives. One of the ways to protect ourselves from bad karma is silence. Silence, in tense situations, or when emotions are uncontrollable, is a way to avoid planting bad seeds in our own hearts and in the hearts of others. Silence helps us stay calm, avoid words that hurt others, and prevent bad karma. Sometimes in life, there are times when we don't need to say anything. Silence is respect, a way to avoid conflict, and especially a way to protect our soul from negativity. When we remain silent, it doesn't mean we are avoiding or intentionally not facing the truth. Silence is a conscious choice, an understanding that sometimes no words can change the situation, but only listening, acceptance, and peace within the heart can soothe all pain. Silence helps us not to be swept away by hasty words, allowing our minds to become clearer to make the right decisions. Buddhist teachings say that when facing difficulties, silence is a method to help us view everything calmly, without being swept away by emotions. When we don't know what to say, remaining silent may be the way to protect ourselves and others from thoughtless words. In those moments of silence, we can feel the stillness in our hearts, reconnect with ourselves, find clarity, and discover peace in the simplest things. Silence is not avoidance or weakness, but a powerful way to protect the peace of our souls. When we know how to remain silent at the right moment, we not only protect ourselves from harmful words, but also help make the surrounding environment peaceful and harmonious. And that is how we plant seeds of good fortune in life, creating a life filled with love, peace, and tranquility. Therefore, words can save or harm, but silence can avoid invisible daggers, helping us maintain inner peace. Learn to keep quiet, know when to speak and when to remain silent. This not only protects us from bad karma, but also brings peace to ourselves and those around us. In silence, we can find true peace, where no words can harm us, and only love and compassion endure. Amidst the noise of society and the ups and downs of relationships, we sometimes forget that silence can be a powerful force, helping us protect peace and regain balance in our souls. One autumn afternoon, you are walking down the familiar road home. A gentle breeze blows by, bringing a slight chill. You walk slowly, thinking about the events of the day. Suddenly, you hear a conversation behind you. Two people are talking about you, not saying anything good, but speaking ill of you. In that moment, your first reaction may be anger or the desire to respond, to explain, to defend your honor. But then you recall Buddha's teaching. Keep your mouth closed to keep your blessings. You say nothing, just continue walking in silence. The anger slowly fades and a sense of tranquility and relief fills your heart. Sometimes not speaking what we think, especially in moments of anger, is the best way to protect ourselves. Words spoken carelessly can hurt others, and sometimes we end up regretting things we've said that weren't necessary. But silence, on the other hand, is the choice that helps us maintain inner peace, avoid unnecessary arguments, and prevent needless harm. Silence does not mean weakness or indecisiveness. In fact, silence is a choice filled with wisdom. When we remain silent, we create space for ourselves to reflect, to listen to our own emotions and those of others. Silence helps us realize that sometimes what we need is not an explanation or defense, but acceptance and understanding. There is a short story I want to share with you about an elderly woman who had endured many hardships in life. One day, she told me about a difficult time when she was misunderstood and criticized by others. The feelings of anger and injustice made her want to immediately defend herself. But then, she remembered a teaching from a teacher she deeply respected. Silence is the best way to protect your heart. Instead of reacting immediately, she chose silence, stayed calm, and took time to think things through. Over time, those who had criticized her began to understand and eventually apologized. Silence is not surrender or endurance. Silence is a choice to protect ourselves from harmful words, to maintain a pure and peaceful heart. In those moments, you will notice that your silence not only helps you find peace, but also causes others to reflect and reconsider their actions and words. Sometimes in this busy life, we are too focused on expressing our opinions, on speaking our emotions and thoughts. But in a world full of noise and argument, knowing when to remain silent is a valuable lesson we need to learn. Silence helps us avoid unnecessary things, helps us protect ourselves, and keeps our soul from being distracted by irrelevant matters. And so, when we keep silent, it doesn't mean we are avoiding life, but rather we are choosing to live with full awareness. We realize that sometimes truth does not need to be spoken. We just need to live and act rightly. When we keep our mouths shut, we are also keeping our blessings, because blessings come from inner peace, and peace can only be found when we know how to choose what truly matters in this life. So, have you ever tried stopping, remaining silent, and listening to your inner voice? In that stillness, you will find answers to many questions in life. And above all, you will experience the peace that comes from silence as a gift you give to yourself. There are times when we face stressful situations, conflicts, or strong emotions. These can be arguments, misunderstandings, or moments when emotions run high and make it hard to control our words. But it is in these moments that silence becomes a powerful method of protecting the soul and keeping our peace. Silence is not avoidance or passivity, but a conscious choice, an active way of maintaining peace in the heart. Especially in tense situations, when emotions are boiling over, words can become strong and can hurt others or ourselves. Silence in such moments is the way to stop, to halt negative thoughts and words that could hurt others, and also a way to prevent our souls from getting caught in the vortex of anger or hatred. Buddha once taught that when facing difficulties or challenges, keeping silent is a way to maintain clarity and wisdom. When we know how to remain silent, we not only protect ourselves from thoughtless words, but also demonstrate maturity, understanding, and compassion. Silence in these moments is not weakness, but a manifestation of inner strength. Because only when we are truly at peace within can we maintain stillness and not be swept away by fleeting emotions. Silence is an art of conduct, a way to show calmness and understanding. Those who can remain silent when necessary are often those who know how to view a situation objectively without being swayed by transient emotions. Silence in these moments gives us time to reflect, to listen to ourselves, and to better understand our emotions. When we don't speak out of anger or sadness, we can maintain a space within our hearts to think and make wiser decisions. Silence is also a very effective healing method. When we remain silent, it doesn't mean we lack emotions, but we are learning to face our emotions without letting them control us. At these times, our souls need a quiet space to breathe, to feel, to listen to ourselves without being disturbed by words and external conflicts. Silence helps us see things more clearly, making us realize that sometimes no words are needed, but just a quiet space to feel the peace in every moment. Silence also helps us maintain peace in relationships. In tense situations with others, sometimes it is unnecessary to argue or explain too much. Silence helps us maintain respect for others while also preventing us from harming the relationship with hasty words. In such moments, knowing when to remain silent is a way to preserve harmony and love in relationships while also maintaining peace in our hearts. When we remain silent, it is the time when we can truly listen and understand others. Silence is not rejection or indifference, but a way for us to take time to better understand the person before us, their emotions and thoughts. Silence in communication is a way to show respect and attentiveness, creating a peaceful space where both sides can share without interruption. In Buddhism, silence is an important part of practice. It helps us cultivate patience, mindfulness, and compassion. Buddha taught that when we learn to keep silent, we are practicing self-control, not being swept away by temporary emotions, and maintaining clarity and peace. Silence is not only the stillness of the external environment, but also the stillness within the soul, the serenity and harmony with oneself. By keeping silent, we not only protect ourselves from the harm caused by words, but we also help our souls find peace. Silence helps us let go of worries and conflicts and reminds us that peace does not come from the outside world, but from within. This is the profound message Buddha wanted to convey. Peace begins with the silence of the soul. Learn to keep silent in tense situations, as that silence will help protect the peace and stillness within your soul. When we remain silent, we not only avoid the harm caused by words, but we also allow our souls to heal, find tranquility, and experience peace in every circumstance. That is the power of silence, a silence that brings maturity, understanding, and deep love for oneself and the world around us. Sometimes we place too much emphasis on expressing our thoughts and emotions, forgetting that there are moments when silence is the precious gift we can offer those around us. Not everyone understands that silence is not weakness, but strength that comes from within. Those who know how to remain silent don't need to speak much, but their presence can soothe wounded hearts, helping hurting souls find peace. One autumn evening, when everything seems to slow down, the setting sun dyes the empty streets gold. You sit in a quiet cafe, listening to the sounds from outside, but not to analyze or argue with anyone. An old friend unexpectedly appears, with a contemplative and slightly troubled expression. No one says anything, but you can feel the sadness shining in their eyes. You don't need to ask much, nor explain or offer comfort. You just sit silently next to them, offering a warm cup of coffee and listening to the breath of life. That silence is not distance, but sincere presence. Sometimes you don't need to say anything. Your presence alone is a great comfort. Those who know how to be silent are often those with inner strength, as they understand that in difficult situations, words sometimes can't resolve everything. They don't need to fill the space with empty words, but instead choose to be there, creating a peaceful space for others to return to. Their wordless presence is like a gentle breeze, soothing the wounds of the heart. There is a small story I want to share with you about a teacher I deeply respect. He was a man of few words, but whenever he appeared, everyone could feel the peace and warmth emanating from his sincere heart. One time, one of his students was facing a great sorrow in life, a loss, an emotional shock. He didn't know how to deal with the pain, so one day he came to seek the teacher, hoping he would offer advice to help him cope. The teacher said nothing, simply invited him to sit and listened in silence. It was a long evening, and the student poured his heart out, while the teacher remained silent, occasionally nodding to show empathy. Eventually, after a long time of talking, the student stopped and looked up at the teacher, asking, "You haven't said anything, but why do I feel so relieved?" The teacher smiled gently, without needing to explain much, for he knew that, in moments of sorrow, words sometimes only add to the weight of sadness. The teacher's silence was the way for the student to feel the shared burden, to understand that no matter how deep the sorrow, they were never alone. I've also witnessed a very special friend, someone I always admire. She is someone who doesn't speak much, but every time she is present, everyone feels more at peace. One time, I sat with her on a rainy afternoon. Everyone around us was talking loudly, but she simply sat there, gazing out the window. The silence in the air was strangely soothing, and I realized that in this fast-paced life, sometimes just a moment of silence can soothe so many sorrows and inner conflicts. Her silence was not coldness or distance, but a way of expressing care and understanding. When you are silent, you are no longer swept up in hasty thoughts. You don't need to express yourself or please others. You simply need to be yourself, to be present in the moment, to listen and feel what is happening around you. Thus, silence is not avoidance, but a conscious choice. Sometimes silence is the best way to preserve inner peace, to listen to and experience life more deeply. Silence helps us better understand ourselves and others, allowing us to see the true values in life. More importantly, our silence can sometimes be a source of comfort and spiritual strength for those around us, helping them find peace in difficult moments. When you understand the power of silence, you will realize that not everything needs to be spoken. Sometimes, all it takes is a look, a gentle gesture, or sincere presence to ease the suffering in someone's heart. And the most important thing is that, in that silence, we find a deep connection with ourselves and those around us. Silence is not giving up, but acceptance, a strength that helps us overcome life's challenges. In the journey of teaching and learning, silence can sometimes be a powerful and effective tool. Great teachers not only know how to impart knowledge, but also how to allow students to explore and experience the lesson deeply for themselves. They understand that there are moments when silence is part of the learning process, helping the learner pause, reflect, and find answers on their own. Imagine, in a classroom, the teacher asks a question not just to challenge the intellect, but to open a new door in the student's mind. Instead of quickly providing an answer, the teacher simply gazes into the student's eyes and remains silent. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the room becomes quiet. Everyone listens and reflects. Then, a student, out of nowhere, stands up and offers an answer that surprises even them. It's not a simple answer, but a profound thought, deeply connected to their personal feelings and experiences. The silence in this situation is not a deficiency, but a wise choice, a tool that helps the student find their own path. When the teacher says nothing, the student is forced to think for themselves, to delve into the knowledge they have learned and their own understanding. Sometimes, silence is the time for the learner to connect with themselves, search for truth within, and recognize things that not everyone can immediately pinpoint. This story also reminds me of a time when I participated in a course on the art of living and mindfulness. The instructor, instead of simply explaining meditation techniques, gave us a special assignment. He asked us to sit in silence and just listen to ourselves for 20 minutes without saying anything. At first, I felt quite uncomfortable and sometimes had random thoughts, but the longer it went on, the more I felt an unusual peace within myself. The incessant thoughts gradually became clearer, and finally, I understood that it is in silence that we can truly listen, feel, and reflect. Education is not just about imparting knowledge, but about creating a space where learners can freely explore and experience. Silence helps learners avoid the pressures of the noisy world, keeping them from distractions. When we stop and remain silent, we allow ourselves and others the time to listen to our inner selves and seek answers from deep within our hearts. Silence in education can also help learners recognize the true values of life. In an educational environment, Teachers are not just transmitters of knowledge, but guides who help students understand the value of reflection and drawing lessons for themselves. When we remain silent, we don't only teach with words, but also with our presence, our ability to listen and to understand. This is how a true teacher can help students grow, not just intellectually, but spiritually. There's a story I once heard from a friend about a beloved literature teacher. Whenever the class became noisy and out of order, instead of scolding or punishing, the teacher would simply sit down and say nothing. That silence would immediately make the entire class quiet, and the students would naturally adjust their behavior. The teacher didn't need to say a word. They used silence to convey the message that, in this space, everyone needed to listen and respect each other. Silence is not abandonment or passivity. On the contrary, silence is a latent strength, a powerful tool that helps us communicate more profoundly. When we are silent, we are no longer swept away by hasty words or instant reactions, but we can truly think, feel, and look at things from a different perspective. It is in silence that the deepest life values can bloom. So when you face a situation in education or life, don't rush to react or explain immediately. Try listening in silence to find the answer, to allow the learner to feel and draw lessons from their own experiences. Because sometimes it is silence that helps us understand ourselves and the world around us most completely. For learners, silence is also an opportunity for them to connect with themselves, to feel and draw lessons for themselves. In those moments of silence, they can discover deep values that sometimes words cannot fully express. Silence in education is the key that opens the door to the intellect and soul of each learner. In today's world, where everything moves quickly, every sound is chaotic, and the atmosphere is always filled with information, we sometimes forget that silence is a precious gift we can give to ourselves. Silence not only helps protect our soul, but it is also a powerful tool to enhance our intellect and clarity in life. When we choose silence, a peaceful space opens in our soul, and in that space, our intellect begins to blossom. Buddha taught that silence is the key to help us open the door to the spiritual realm, allowing us to realize deeper things about ourselves and the world around us. Silence helps us eliminate the noise of unnecessary thoughts and emotions, allowing our minds to become clearer and our intellect to become deeper. When we remain silent, it doesn't mean we abandon thoughts or emotions, but we allow ourselves to listen and feel everything more subtly, without getting swept up in hasty reactions or creating conflicts within our soul. In silence, we can see ourselves and life more clearly, no longer clouded by the outside noise. That is when we can reflect and recognize what is truly important in life, the purpose of life, and the deep values we are pursuing. Silence is the opportunity for us to still our souls. And when the soul is still, intellect naturally develops. In silence, we can notice our thoughts, emotions, and actions. And from there, we can begin to master them. We are no longer swept away by hasty reactions, but we can act wisely with intellect and compassion. This is one of the ways that Buddhism helps us develop intellect, through stillness and the ability to observe ourselves without being bound by negative emotions and thoughts. Buddha always encouraged us to live in the present, and silence is a way to practice this. When we remain silent, we can focus on each moment, realizing that every second is valuable and brings us valuable lessons. Silence helps us listen to everything around us with an empty heart, not influenced by worries or memories of the past. When living in the present, our intellect becomes sharper, and we can clearly see the paths we should take, the right decisions we need to make. When facing difficulties in life, we can use silence as a method to calm the mind and gain clearer intellect. During hard times or challenges, instead of reacting hastily, we can choose silence to allow the mind time to think and find solutions. It is in silence that we can clearly see the path we need to take and make the right decision, rather than acting in haste or deciding based on temporary emotions. Silence also helps us improve our ability to observe and listen to others. In communication, sometimes we focus too much on speaking and forget that listening is what really matters. Silence allows us to listen to others more deeply, not just with our ears, but with our hearts. When we listen, we not only understand what others are saying, but we can also sense what they are not saying. This is an important ability that intellect brings, and silence is the method that helps us cultivate this ability. In addition, silence helps us find balance in life. Sometimes we get caught up in relationships, work, or goals that seem endless, and all of these things create immense pressure on our souls. Silence is when we allow ourselves to escape these worries, to refresh ourselves, and to find peace in our hearts. When we know how to find silence amidst life's busyness, we will find that our minds become lighter, more still, and our intellect will develop naturally. In Buddhism, silence is a method that helps us cultivate mindfulness, clarity, and compassion. When we practice silence, we are learning how to control our emotions, master our thoughts and actions. Silence helps us see the world with a clear soul, and from there, intellect grows stronger. This stillness is the foundation of clarity, helping us understand ourselves, the world, and the path we are walking. Silence is not avoidance or retreat from life, but a way to reconnect with ourselves and the world around us. When we know how to choose silence at the right time, we will feel clarity in each decision and action. This is the path that Buddhism leads us to, the path of mindfulness, deep intellect, and peace in the soul. Therefore, take moments of silence in your life. Let your mind rest, let your intellect shine, and let your heart be enveloped in peace and love. It is in that silence that you will find the strength and clarity to overcome any challenge and find the path to true happiness. Love is a precious and sacred thing. True love is not only expressed through words or actions, but sometimes it is in silence that love becomes deeper and more complete than ever. Buddha taught that unconditional love is one of the most noble values we can give to one another. And silence, in certain situations, is a special way to express this love, a way that requires no words yet creates space for acceptance and compassion. Unconditional love is not a feeling full of ambition or expectations, but a giving without asking for anything in return. It is the love we have for others without requiring them to change or become someone else, but simply loving them as they are. When we love someone unconditionally, we don't seek perfection, but we want them to live freely, to be themselves without fear or worry about judgment. Silence, in certain situations, can become a wonderful way to express this unconditional love. When someone we love is going through sorrow, pain, or anxiety, words may not be enough to ease their suffering. Sometimes, comforting words, though well-intended, cannot soothe the sadness in their hearts. And in those moments, silence is a way for us to allow that person to feel our presence without disturbing or imposing our emotions on them. A gentle touch, a loving look, or attentive listening is enough to make them feel at ease and not alone. Silence in love does not mean coldness or indifference. On the contrary, it is the deep understanding that sometimes simply being there beside someone without saying anything is enough. Silence in such moments is a form of acceptance and compassion, a way to show that no matter what that person is going through, we are there, accepting all of who they are, including their weaknesses and pain. The unconditional love that Buddha speaks of is love without attachment, without expectation or judgment. When we love others in this way, we are not only understanding them, but we are also embracing and accepting everything they carry. Silence in love is when we respect their personal space, allowing them to be themselves without feeling they need to change or be artificial to meet someone else's expectations. Silence is also a way for us to learn humility in love. When we love someone, we don't need to constantly prove our feelings through words or actions. Sometimes true love is silence, respecting each other's private moments and space. Silence is the way to show that we don't need to do anything grand to prove our love, but just being ourselves, loving and accepting the other person sincerely. Buddha always taught that love is not about possession or control, but freedom, tranquility, and compassion. Silence in love helps us not to impose or restrict the other person, but to allow them to live their own life while we stand by, loving and supporting them in every circumstance. That is love without words, but deeper and stronger than ever. Unconditional love in Buddhism is also compassion, the compassion we give to all beings. Silence in love is the way we practice compassion, where sometimes words are not enough to heal the pain, and only listening and accepting can soothe the suffering in someone else's heart. This silence is not avoidance, but the presence of a generous and compassionate soul, always ready to share and empathize. In our relationships with others, silence is a way to express deep love without speaking. Silence allows us to understand what the other person is not saying, and in doing so, we can accompany them through difficulties without needing to be elaborate or complicated. True love is not something that can be expressed through flowery words. It is simply being sincerely present in their life, even in moments of silence. So learn to love and express love through silence. Let silence become a powerful and meaningful way to accept and embrace, so that we can love not only through words, but with our hearts and souls. Unconditional love, through silence, is a priceless gift we can give to ourselves and others, helping to heal our souls and making the world a better, more peaceful place. Silence is not just the act of stopping speech, but a state of full presence and mindfulness. It is being present in each moment to feel and share, not through words, but through empathy and understanding. When we are silent, it doesn't mean we are withdrawing or avoiding. It means we are opening our hearts, ready to receive and create a space for a deep connection with others. There's a story I always remember. One rainy morning, a close friend and I sat together in a familiar cafe. We didn't say a word, just silently sitting next to each other, each immersed in our own thoughts. After a while, my friend suddenly shared a sad story from her life. Although she didn't speak much, in every word, I could feel the exhaustion and sorrow in her heart. I didn't rush to give advice or try to soothe her pain. I simply sat there, listening with all my heart. That silence, though wordless, made me feel a deep connection between us. Sometimes, just being present in silence, we can share so much, and that connection doesn't need words. Being present in silence is a way for us to express care and concern in a profound way. When we remain silent beside others, we're not merely saying nothing, but we are creating a peaceful space, allowing the other person to feel respect and understanding. In those moments, one can feel that, even without words, they are still loved and accepted. There was also a time when I attended a meditation session led by a spiritual teacher. The teacher didn't explain much, nor did he offer any specific lessons, but asked us to sit, remain silent, and listen to ourselves. During the meditation, there were long moments of silence, with no one saying anything, no one doing anything, just complete presence in the moment. In that silence, I felt a peaceful energy spreading, as though every breath and every thought became lighter and clearer. It was mindfulness in silence, a deep connection with myself, helping me find peace in my soul. After the meditation ended, I realized that we don't always need to speak a lot to understand one another. Sometimes simply listening and being present in silence is enough to create a sincere and deep connection. Silence in education is the same. A true teacher understands the value of silence. When teaching students, a teacher not only imparts knowledge, but also knows when to remain silent so that students can reflect and draw lessons for themselves. Sometimes the teacher will remain silent, letting the students find the answers on their own, helping them understand that learning is not just following instructions, but also self-awakening and inner realization. That silence is not absence, but a refined choice, helping the learner to listen, think, and grow from the lessons without too many explanations. I recall once attending a meditation class with a teacher I deeply respected. He was a man of few words, and whenever he taught, he chose simple, concise phrases that carried profound messages. One morning, while guiding us in a meditation, he said nothing at all. He only asked us to sit and listen to ourselves. We remained silent, feeling each breath, each sensation in our bodies. Even without words, the teacher conveyed a profound lesson about being present in the moment. Only when we are silent can we truly feel the connection with ourselves and with others. The beauty of silence is that it never diminishes care or affection. On the contrary, silence can make us feel a complete and full presence. Only in silence can we hear what words cannot fully express. Silence is not avoidance, it is an opening of the heart, ready to receive and share without needing to articulate through words. Silence is also a strength that heals the wounds in another's heart. When you remain silent, you create a peaceful space where wounds can be exposed and healed. A presence in silence can sometimes be the best way to let others feel deep understanding and empathy from you. So, don't fear silence. Don't think that silence means a lack of affection or care. Silence is a full and mindful presence, a way for us to connect with the world around us in the deepest way. This silence is not just the absence of words, but a powerful form of communication, a way for us to share love, empathy, and understanding without needing to speak. When you can be present in silence, you will realize that deep connections with others don't always come from words, but from quiet moments, from genuine presence in every breath, in every step. In this life, everyone has their own story, joys, sorrows, worries, and desires. When they face difficulties, sometimes they don't need rushed advice or quick encouragement, but simply a sincere listening ear without judgment to feel that they are not alone. And in those moments, silence becomes a wonderful method of empathy, a way to express deep love without saying a word. Buddha taught that empathy is not simply about feeling the sadness or joy of others, but also about deeply understanding the emotions and pains they are experiencing. Silence in empathy is not indifference or detachment, but a form of respect and love, where we take the time to understand others without imposing our own thoughts or judgments. Sometimes, no words can alleviate the pain of others, but simply being silent, sitting beside them, and listening to what they have not yet spoken is a way to empathize, a way to share the burden they are carrying. Silence helps us avoid being swept up in personal emotions and thoughts when interacting with others. Instead of offering advice or judgment, silence allows us to maintain a peaceful space where the other person can freely express their innermost feelings. We do not need to solve their problems immediately, but just to let them feel our understanding and presence, which is the deepest form of empathy we can offer. Silence and empathy is a way to avoid hasty reactions or thoughtless words. Advice can sometimes be unnecessary, but sincere listening has great power. When we listen without offering any judgment or evaluation, people feel accepted and loved just as they are. They do not feel judged or pressured to change to meet others' expectations. Only silence, heartfelt listening, can make them feel at ease and free to express their truest emotions. Buddha once taught that within each of us lies a sacred part, an eternal aspect that is not affected by the suffering or fluctuations of life. When we remain silent to listen to others, we are not only empathizing with them, but also connecting with the peace within our own soul. Silence is not avoidance, but a meaningful presence, helping to soothe the conflicts in our minds, allowing us to view situations more clearly. Silence in empathy is also a way to learn humility in our relationships with others. When we remain silent and listen, we do not place ourselves above others, but truly offer them the space to express everything they wish to say. Sometimes, those who are suffering do not need advice or explanations, but simply someone who listens with an open heart so they can feel loved and respected. When we do this, not only will the other person feel at ease, but we ourselves will also feel lighter, as this genuine connection brings peace to our souls. Silence and empathy is also a part of healing emotional wounds. When we truly listen to others without judgment or criticism, we help them release emotions that have been trapped within their hearts. These emotions, when not expressed, become deep wounds in the soul. When we remain silent and listen, we help them open the door to release those emotions, allowing them to feel lighter and more at peace. This is how silence can bring profound healing to the human soul. For each person, when facing difficulties or sadness, they don't always need an immediate solution, but a space to be shared and understood. Silence in such situations becomes a magical remedy, helping them feel relieved and less alone. In these moments, we don't need to say much, just to be present and listen with a compassionate heart. This is how we truly empathize with what others are going through, and how we express the unconditional love that Buddha taught. Buddhist teachings always tell us that empathy is the foundation of compassion. When we learn to listen and empathize with others, we are also training ourselves to love and accept ourselves. Only when we can understand and love others through silence and sincere listening can we find peace within our own hearts. This is the way to heal, to mend the cracks in relationships and in the soul of each person. Therefore, let silence become a means for us to truly empathize with others. Take the time to listen with an open heart so the other person can feel that they are not alone. In that silence, we will find a deep connection, not only with others, but also with ourselves, with the peace and eternal love that Buddha's teachings convey. In the hustle and bustle of modern life, where every moment seems to be racing against time, finding a bit of silence, a moment of stillness amidst the chaos, is incredibly precious. Practicing silence not only helps us find peace in our busy lives, but also calms the inner storms, bringing us back to ourselves, allowing us to see the deeper values of life more clearly. This story is a small experience I want to share. One morning, as I was getting ready to leave the house to begin my workday, I realized I was exhausted from the constant noise around me, from the honking cars outside to the sounds of my phone and computer. I decided to take 15 minutes of silence before starting my work. I sat down in a chair, closed my eyes, and simply listened to my breath, surrounded by nothing but silence. That moment, though it seemed short, made me feel peace spreading through my body, soothing all the anxiety and stress. I clearly realized that when there's no noise around, I can hear myself more clearly. It was a sense of serenity I couldn't find in anything else but silence. Silence is a powerful tool that helps us return to ourselves, to reflect and listen to our thoughts. When we are busy throughout the day, we often get caught up in worries, goals, and the hustle of life. But sometimes, just a little time in silence during the day can make everything clearer. Silence gives us space to think, to reflect on what is past, to feel more deeply what is happening around us and within us. The simplest practice of silence is to set aside a specific time each day to sit in silence, doing nothing. Don't rush to plan a long hour of meditation, but just a few minutes every day, where you can completely detach from the chaos of the outside world. You can start by sitting in a quiet corner, closing your eyes, listening to your breath, and simply existing in that moment. You'll be surprised to realize that in just a few minutes of silence, your mind will begin to calm, as if all the tension and anxiety have been washed away. A small story in my life also illustrates the power of practicing silence. Once I attended an emotional management course where the teacher asked us to practice silence for a whole day. At first, I found it very difficult because I was used to talking and reacting to everything around me. But when I started to remain silent, I realized that it wasn't just speaking that helped me solve problems, but sometimes silence was the key to understanding and feeling deeper empathy. Silence helped me notice the emotions quietly rising within me and helped me understand the tension and exhaustion in my body that I hadn't paid attention to. In busy, nonstop days, silence is a great way to create space for oneself. We can't always avoid all the noise around us, but in those brief moments, we can choose silence and return to ourselves. Silence is not just a state of stillness. It is a way for us to listen, to understand, and to feel life more deeply. One of the best pieces of advice I learned is to practice silence in daily life. Silence is not avoiding or evading problems, but a way for us to create a peaceful space within. When you take a little time each day to be silent, you will find it easier to face challenges, manage your emotions, and solve problems that arise. This is a lesson not everyone easily realizes, But when you practice silence, life seems to become lighter. There is one important thing about practicing silence that I want to share. Silence is not just about not speaking, it's about full and mindful presence. When you sit in silence, truly be present in that moment. Listen to your body, feel what's happening inside, and let all thoughts gradually settle. When you do this, you'll feel the peace and deep connection with yourself. Silence is not absence, but a proactive choice to create peace. And when you practice silence every day, you will gradually find moments of peace amid the noise, amid the worries of life. Take a few minutes each day to live in silence, to feel your presence, and you'll see that life becomes fuller and more meaningful than ever before. In difficult moments of life, when everything seems too heavy and pushes us to the limits of exhaustion, sometimes what we need most is not an immediate solution or advice. It's silence, a peaceful space where the soul can breathe, allowing us to restore and regenerate our inner strength. Buddha taught that when we know how to keep silent and not rush to act, our soul will automatically find peace and regenerate the positive energy we've lost. In life, there are times when we feel exhausted, as if we no longer have the strength to face the next challenge. At those times, silence can be a wonderful remedy to help the soul regain balance. Silence is not avoiding or rejecting life. It's a method where we allow ourselves to stop, not having to make decisions, not having to act, but simply allowing the mind and body to rest. It's like allowing a full cup of water to settle, letting what is unnecessary sink to the bottom, and the water becomes clear again. Silence in moments of exhaustion and sorrow is an opportunity for us to recover, allowing our souls to regain their purity. When we fall into states of fatigue, stress, or face great pain, our minds are often disordered with continuous, restless thoughts that increase our anxiety and fatigue. At this time, silence and stopping to think about the problem is a way to reduce stress, helping us view everything with calmness and clarity. Silence is when we don't have to analyze everything or seek immediate answers, but simply allow everything to settle so we can see the situation from a new, gentler perspective. Silence also helps us restore inner strength by creating space for tranquility in the mind. When the mind is not caught up in anxious thoughts, we can feel peace from within. Buddha taught that when the soul is at peace, we can better understand ourselves, recognize what is truly important and necessary, and from there, regenerate the strength to continue in life. Silence is when we don't need to face the outside world, but only need to confront ourselves to reclaim the long-forgotten energy within. Especially in times of sorrow, when we face loss, separation, or failure, silence helps us heal. Pain and hurt often leave us unable to focus or think clearly. At this time, setting aside a period of silence, temporarily stopping all activities, is a way to help the soul begin to heal from within. Silence helps us stop trying to do unnecessary things and not force ourselves to find an immediate solution. Instead, we simply allow emotions and thoughts to flow freely, and from there, tranquility opens the opportunity for recovery and renewal. In Buddhism, keeping silence is not only a physical act, but also a mental state. Silence helps us escape the pull of negative emotions, allowing our soul to be peaceful and light. When we are silent, we also practice letting go of burdens and unnecessary worries, and letting the mind return to mindfulness and the inner peace that resides within each of us. This is the path to recovery and the renewal of inner energy. Moreover, silence is a way for us to learn patience and acceptance. When we remain silent, we do not rush to act or change anything, but simply let things pass, allowing life to find its own way. This patience is an essential part of the process of restoring inner strength. In difficult times, we need time to feel, to recover, and sometimes silence is the method that helps us patiently wait for things to stabilize. This is part of the healing process Buddha taught. No need to rush, no need to force, but simply allow ourselves to breathe, to pause, and find tranquility in the soul. Silence also helps us view everything in a new light. When we are no longer under the pressure of time, work, or external factors, we begin to recognize what is truly important in life. It is in this stillness that we can find deeper values, eternal truths that we may have overlooked in the hustle and bustle of life. This is the time when we reconnect with ourselves, with the sacred and profound aspects within, and from there, restore and refresh our life energy. So, when life makes us feel tired and stressed, take moments of silence for yourself. Don't rush to do anything. Don't worry about finding a solution immediately. Just allow your mind and body to rest, let everything settle, and from there, inner strength will be restored. Silence is not only a way to escape the chaos of life, but also a method to find peace and renewed energy, helping us move forward more steadfastly on our life journey. Silence is a gift we can give ourselves, and sometimes it is the opportunity to look deeply at things in life that we hadn't noticed before. Buddha always taught that when we know how to keep silence, we not only protect the peace in our soul, but also create space to observe and learn from the valuable things life is offering. Silence is not avoidance or escape, but an active search for tranquility in the soul to observe and understand everything more profoundly. In moments of silence, we can begin to observe life more subtly. When we are no longer caught up in the noisy thoughts in our minds, no longer worrying about the past or future, we can see the small things, the details that are usually overlooked. Silence gives us a fresh perspective, helping us realize that not all important things need to be spoken. Gentle actions, gestures from others, quiet emotions, soft smiles, or sharing glances can tell deep stories that words cannot fully express. When we are silent, we also learn to observe the smallest emotions, from a slight furrowed brow to a fleeting blink or a gentle breath. Each of these signs may be a message that life is sending us. In silence, our minds become clearer, and from there, we can notice things that were previously overlooked in the rush of life. Buddha taught that in order to understand the true nature of things, we must view them with eyes not clouded by worries or desires. When silent, we see more clearly what is truly happening, and through this, we can learn valuable lessons from life. Silence helps us not only observe but also understand. Without words interrupting, we can listen to life as it truly is, not filtered through emotions or biases. Every action of others, every gesture or small word can be a lesson, a message about how to live, compassion, and understanding. In moments of silence, we can see more clearly the true nature of things, realizing that not all important things need to be expressed through words. It is in silence that we can feel the depth of life. Silence is an opportunity for us to learn how to listen, not just to the words of others, but also to what they do not say. There are things that only silence can reveal, from gentle tones to emotions that others are too afraid to express. Silence helps us become better listeners, allowing us to realize that sometimes presence requires no words, only sharing from the heart, understanding through small actions. In the healing journey, silence also plays an extremely important role. When we are silent, we allow ourselves to find peace within, to feel our emotions and thoughts more clearly. Silence is a way to face unspoken pains, emotions that have not been understood. It is in those moments that wounds in the soul can begin to heal, when we don't need to search for answers or explanations, but simply feel our own presence in the stillness. At the same time, when observing life in silence, we will realize that everyone has their own stories, their own pains and joys. And it is in that silence that we can learn to love and be more compassionate. Silence helps us not to judge, not to impose, but only to listen and accept everything as it is. When we stop judging and just observe, we will feel a deep connection with others, with the world around us, and with ourselves. Buddha's teachings tell us that understanding and wisdom do not come from speaking a lot or explaining, but from observing and listening deeply. When we keep silent, we not only maintain peace within, but also have the opportunity to see everything more clearly and subtly. Silence helps us detach from the noise of the outside world to return to ourselves and the tranquility within the mind. Silence is an opportunity to learn, not just from the world outside, but also from ourselves. When we are silent, we can notice things that the mind previously couldn't absorb, emotions that have not been understood, thoughts that haven't been resolved. This is how we reconnect with ourselves, to understand more about the essence of life and the lessons each day brings. Therefore, learn to be silent, not just in times when we need rest, but also in moments when we need to listen to life and those around us. Silence is the opportunity to observe life, to learn, and to grow. It is in that silence that we will find peace, understanding, and deep connection with ourselves and the world around us. In a life full of dynamic events, loud conversations, and never-ending debates, maintaining silence is sometimes the key to protecting our clarity. Silence in a crowd is not avoidance or weakness, but a way for us to maintain our focus, not being swept away by the emotions of others. And sometimes, it is precisely in that silence that we find the answer to the issues we are facing. Imagine you are at a meeting where everyone around you is passionately debating an issue. Each person has strong opinions and constantly rebutting one another. In that moment, you might feel like speaking up to express your point of view, but something inside you urges you to remain silent. You say nothing, simply listen, and gradually you realize that silence helps you view everything more clearly. You are not swept away by the emotions of those around you, and instead you can think clearly, undistracted by the noisy opinions in the air. This is the power of silence. It helps us retain clarity in moments of chaos, helping us understand the true nature of the problem without being clouded by external factors. Silence in the crowd is also a way for us to protect ourselves from negative influences. When debates become tense, it's easy to get swept up in emotions, leading to hasty decisions or thoughtless words. But when we choose silence, we give ourselves time to breathe, to think, and to analyze the situation more thoroughly. Silence is not abandonment, but a wise choice, a way to master our emotions and not let them control our actions. I remember once when I participated in an important meeting with a group of colleagues. Everyone was very passionate, debating how to implement a large project. The different opinions and the tension in the air kept rising. At that moment, I felt a strong urge to speak up and clarify the issue. However, I decided to stay silent. I just listened to everyone, observed, and felt the situation. When everyone had finished speaking, I realized that my silence had allowed me to think more carefully, and when I did speak, I could present my ideas clearly, unaffected by emotions or impulsive reactions. In the end, my ideas helped resolve the problem more effectively. From that, I understood that silence in tense moments is a way to stay clear-headed, to view the issue from a different angle. Silence in the crowd also helps us maintain our identity. In this society, where we often face external pressures, silence can sometimes be the strongest affirmation of self-control and independence. When you remain silent in a debate or in a crowd, it's not out of fear or lack of confidence, but because you understand that silence can speak volumes. It shows that you don't need to compete with anyone, don't need to express an opinion just to fit in, but can live freely in your own way, holding firm to your views and choices. Once, I had the opportunity to meet an elderly person I deeply respect. He was a man of few words, but whenever he spoke, everyone listened. I asked him about the secret to maintaining calm and clarity in all situations. He smiled and said, "In life, we often face noise and hasty words, but silence is the way to keep the soul calm." He shared that many times he chose silence in group conversations, not because he had nothing to say, but because he knew that silence helped him listen more clearly, feel more deeply, and think more thoughtfully. Silence in the crowd teaches us patience and humility. It is a way for us not to rush to react, not to be swept up in the words of others. Instead, we can take time to think, to control our emotions, and to make wise decisions. And in that silence, we will learn valuable lessons about self-mastery, tranquility in the soul, and clarity in action. Sometimes, life doesn't require words, doesn't require us to express every thought and feeling. Sometimes, silence is the best answer to every problem. When you can remain silent in the crowd, you'll realize that it's an inner strength, helping you maintain clarity and not be influenced by external emotions. Try taking moments of silence in your life, and you will feel the peace and clarity it brings. In life, love is one of the most profound and wonderful emotions a person can experience. But love doesn't always need to be expressed through words, long stories, or grand gestures. Sometimes silence is the most powerful and subtle way to express love. Buddha taught that, in love, silence is not just the absence of sound, but a presence full of understanding and empathy. Silence is the way two people who love each other can understand each other without needing to say everything. And in that silence, love can heal the wounds that words cannot. When we love someone, sometimes words become unnecessary. A glance, a gentle touch, or simply being present together can convey all that we feel. In love, silence is not distance or indifference, but a subtle form of communication, a way for two people to understand each other without needing to express everything in words. When we truly love someone, we don't always need to say it all, because true love doesn't rely on empty promises or grand speeches. It exists in the silent sharing, in the moments spent together without words, but still feeling the depth and completeness. Buddha taught that, in silence, we can find deep understanding. Silence in love is when we let our hearts settle, not influenced by the worries outside, and only the connection between two hearts remains. Those are moments when two people don't need to explain too much, but simply allow themselves to feel the presence of the other. Silence helps us understand that sometimes we don't need to say much. We just need to be there and let love express itself naturally. When we truly love, silence is the way we show deep understanding without needing to express feelings in words. Silence in love also helps us maintain peace in the soul, especially when facing difficulties and challenges in life. When we go through moments of sorrow and emotional turmoil, we don't always need comforting words or advice. Sometimes simply having someone beside us, silently sharing, is enough. In that silence, we can feel comfort, compassion, and unconditional love. Silence at these times is not avoidance or abandonment, but a way for us to accept and heal from the presence of a loved one. In Buddhism, silence is an important part of nurturing love and compassion. When we know how to be silent, we not only maintain tranquility in our hearts, but also show respect and love for others. Silence in love is the understanding that sometimes words can hurt, while silence can soothe and bring peace. Love is not about flowery words, but sincere presence, a way for us to understand and accept each other unconditionally. Silence in love can also be a way for us to resolve conflicts and misunderstandings without the need for arguments. When two people love each other, there are times when silence helps both of them calm down, think carefully, and view the issue more objectively. This is when love truly matures, when we understand that not everything needs to be said to clarify things. Sometimes just listening, being silent, and giving each other space to reflect is enough. Silence is not retreat or frustration, but an understanding that loving each other isn't only about smooth times, but also about being willing to listen and accept each other during difficult moments. Love doesn't always need words. It is often expressed through small actions, even silence. When we love someone, sometimes just sitting together in silence, sharing a space without saying anything is enough to understand each other better. Silence is an opportunity for us to explore the hidden emotions inside ourselves and others. When there are no words interrupting, we can feel the sincerity and unconditional love that sometimes words cannot fully express. In silence, we also learn to let go, allowing love to grow freely. Silence is when we no longer force the other person to become someone else, but simply love them as they are. In love, silence doesn't mean indifference. It is a form of respect, a way for both to love and accept each other without needing to change. Silence in love also nurtures peace in the soul, where we don't have to worry about the past or future, but can simply live fully in the present, in the connection we share with our loved one. Therefore, in love, never forget that silence is also a way to express deep love. Sometimes, There's no need to speak much, just being present with each other, understanding, and silently accepting each other makes love stronger than ever. Let silence be part of the journey of love, helping us understand each other more, heal wounds, and create a peaceful space for love to grow. In life, we can't avoid challenges and unexpected adversities. When facing difficulties, often there's a strong urge to react immediately, to resolve the problem right away. But one thing I've learned from setbacks and hardships is that silence is one of the best ways to stay calm, not get swept up in emotions, and find solutions from inner peace. Once I faced a difficult situation at work. A major project I prepared for was unexpectedly a failure. Anxiety, stress, and disappointment flooded in like a big wave. Questions kept running through my mind. Why did this happen? What did I do wrong? What should I do now? I could easily have been swept up in those emotions, frustrated, angry, or even wanting to blame someone else. But instead, I decided to take a moment of silence. I sat down, closed my eyes, and took a deep breath. Silence was not avoiding the problem, but creating space for myself to pause, to view the situation from a different perspective. In that silence, I began to feel calm returning to my body. The anxiety and stress slowly dissipated. It wasn't that I found an immediate solution, but I was able to think more clearly. I realized that to solve the problem, first, I needed to remain calm, review what had happened, and find the cause instead of reacting hastily or thoughtlessly. Miraculously, in that moment of silence, everything became clearer, and I found the right direction to overcome the difficulty. Silence in difficult moments not only helps us maintain calmness, but also allows us to broaden our minds, enabling us to look at problems more objectively and rationally. When we're not swept up in temporary emotions, we can think logically, find solutions to problems, and not let negative feelings cloud our judgment. In many situations, silence helps us understand that reacting immediately is not always the best way to solve things. Sometimes, just taking a moment to listen to ourselves, to calm down, is when we can see the way forward more clearly. There is a story I really like and always remember. It is about a teacher I deeply respect. He is someone who always remains calm in any situation, even when facing the most difficult challenges. One time, a student came to him, feeling completely confused about what to do when faced with a difficult situation at work. The student complained about his frustrations and worries about the future. The teacher did not rush to give advice, but simply sat there, listening to every word the student said. After a while of silence, the teacher spoke. "You've been living a very fast-paced life, but sometimes life requires us to stop and breathe for a moment. Silence is not avoidance, it is awareness. When you are calm, you will see the path more clearly." The student understood, and shortly after, he decided to take some time to think thoroughly and find a solution to his problem. Silence in difficult moments, therefore, is not giving up or avoiding responsibility. It is a wise choice. Silence allows us to realize that sometimes we don't need to act immediately, but rather give ourselves space to think, to consider, and to find the best solution. When we maintain calmness in the face of challenges, we not only solve the problem more effectively, but also grow in the process of confronting life's difficulties. There was also a time when I faced a personal challenge in my life. When I realized I couldn't change the situation, I chose silence instead of complaining or blaming. I took time to listen to myself, to think about what I could do in that moment and how I could make the situation better. In that silence, I found a new direction, not from external advice, but from within myself. Silence helped me understand that life doesn't always go as planned, but what matters is how we face it and respond. So when facing difficulty, don't rush to react. Don't let emotions influence your decisions. Take a moment to pause, to be silent, and to think. Silence will help you stay calm, not only to solve the problem wisely, but also to grow through each challenge. When we know how to be silent in difficult moments, we not only solve the problem, but also find peace within ourselves and move forward with firm faith in the future. In the journey of seeking peace and spiritual growth, there is an essential element that Buddha always emphasized: silence. Silence is not just stopping talking, it is a way for us to calm the mind and better understand the nature of our soul and the world around us. In the process of practicing, learning to be silent, not saying everything on our mind, is a clear sign of spiritual maturity. It is when a practitioner begins to realize the power of speech and understands that sometimes silence is the best way to protect and nourish the soul. When we start our spiritual journey, we may encounter many chaotic emotions, restless thoughts, and sometimes inner conflicts. At this time, words can easily become a tool to release emotions, to vent things we haven't addressed. However, Buddha taught that words have great power. They can build or break, soothe or hurt. Spiritual maturity doesn't only come from understanding teachings or participating in meditation sessions, but also from learning how to control our speech, from understanding that we don't always need to say everything we think. Silence in the process of practice is not just a temporary state, but a deep practice. Every time we remain silent in the face of strong emotions, we step closer to spiritual maturity. Silence is not avoidance or surrender, but a way to view the situation more clearly, not getting swept up in temporary emotions and hasty reactions. When we know how to be silent, we also learn patience, learn how to let time soothe anger or anxiety. In Buddhism, silence is an essential part of practice because speech is one of the strongest elements that influence the mind and the world around us. When we don't control our words, we may unintentionally create negative karma, causing harm to others and ourselves. Therefore, learning to remain silent in difficult situations is an important part of nurturing peace in the soul. Silence helps us develop the ability to view things wisely, not influenced by temporary emotions. It also nurtures compassion and tolerance, because when silent, we are less likely to rush to judge or criticize others. Silence is also a way for us to reconnect with ourselves. In silence, we can hear the voice of our heart, the deep desires we sometimes fail to notice because they are overshadowed by the noise of life. Silence helps us reconnect with our natural essence, helping us become aware of the inner calm that our soul inherently possesses. When we are no longer distracted by words, we can reflect on ourselves, recognize the true thoughts and emotions we are experiencing, and from there, begin to heal the wounds of the soul and move towards enlightenment. Spiritual maturity is also reflected in the ability to listen, not just to the outside world, but to ourselves. Silence is the way for us to truly listen to everything more profoundly. When we are silent, we not only hear what others say, but also hear what they do not express, the emotions hidden behind every gesture and glance. Silence helps us realize that sometimes words cannot fully convey what is in someone's heart, and we can only truly understand each other when we know how to remain silent and listen with our hearts. In everyday life, there are moments when we face difficulties, conflicts, and misunderstandings with others. Silence in these moments is a way for us to maintain peace in our hearts, and it is also a way to show spiritual maturity. When we refrain from speaking words of anger or resentment, we not only protect our relationship, but also prevent our soul from being hurt by negative emotions. Silence helps us pause before situations, to think things through and make better decisions. Spiritual maturity also comes from learning how to understand others, not just through words, but also through actions and attitudes in life. Silence is a way for us to respect others' space and privacy, so they can live and express themselves without fear of judgment. Silence helps us understand that love is not control or imposition, but acceptance and understanding, a quiet presence that is deeply meaningful. In the process of spiritual practice, learning to be silent is one of the methods that helps us control our minds and actions. Silence helps us avoid being swept up in desires and negative emotions, allowing us to find peace in every moment. When we learn to be silent, we also learn to let go of unnecessary things, freeing and opening our soul. Silence is not avoiding life, but part of mindful living, helping us appreciate the value of every moment, every action, and every word in life. Therefore, spiritual maturity comes not only from learning teachings, but also from knowing how to be silent at the right times, allowing the soul to settle and view everything clearly and subtly. Silence is an important part of the path of spiritual practice, helping us connect with our true nature, and from there find peace, freedom, and enlightenment. There are times when we are hurt by someone's words or actions. Whether small or large, these wounds can make us feel pain and anger. But in these moments, one of the most powerful ways to show forgiveness is silence. Silence is not avoidance, but a choice full of compassion, a way to free ourselves from negative emotions and open the door to peace, not only for ourselves, but also for others. I remember once when I felt hurt by the words of a close friend. She unintentionally made me feel insulted, and immediately, I felt the urge to react, to speak out with accusations and criticisms. However, instead of doing that, I chose silence. I didn't argue, didn't demand an explanation or apology. I simply stayed silent, giving myself space to think and master my emotions. In that silence, I no longer felt anger, but instead understanding and empathy. I realized that sometimes silence is the best way to show forgiveness. No need to say anything, no need to do anything, just allowing myself to let go of the hurt and let everything pass gently. Silence in such situations is an act of freedom. It doesn't mean we are ignoring, but that we choose not to hold on to negative emotions. When we are silent, we no longer allow others' words or actions to control our emotions. True forgiveness is not a word or a specific act, but a choice to not be bound by the past, to not let wounds disrupt the peace in our soul. Another story that I like and find deeply meaningful is about a teacher. This teacher was always patient and compassionate, but once a student did something that greatly disappointed him. However, the teacher did not scold or get angry. He remained silent in a very subtle way. In the following days, the student felt the teacher's silence and gradually understood his mistakes without needing to hear criticism. The teacher's silence helped the student become more aware of his actions and find his own way to make amends. This was a form of forgiveness that was incredibly subtle, demonstrating tolerance and kindness without the need for words. Silence when forgiving is not easy. We always have the tendency to protect our ego, to react when we are hurt. But sometimes we need to learn how to be silent, to let go of negative emotions, to find peace in our hearts. Silence does not mean we are weak, but rather we are strong enough not to let hurt affect our lives. Silence is a conscious choice not to waste energy on things that are not worth it. I have also witnessed a friend of mine, after a heated argument with her partner, choose silence instead of continuing the debate. She didn't say anything, just remained silent and let everything calm down. After a while, when both of them had calmed down, she approached her partner, not to criticize or blame, but to share understanding and forgiveness. This story made me realize that silence is not about giving up or ignoring, but a way to help us recognize what is more important in a relationship. It is maturity, a way to overcome conflicts without hurting each other. Silence and forgiveness not only helps us let go of hurt, but is also a way to preserve relationships. When we choose silence instead of criticizing or blaming, we create space for the other person to reflect on their mistakes without feeling attacked or ashamed. In that silence, we not only forgive others, but also forgive ourselves. Because when we no longer hold on to anger, we feel lighter and freer. True forgiveness does not come from words, but from an open heart, from letting go of negative emotions and living with inner peace. And silence, with its magical power, is the tool that helps us do this. Silence is not avoidance, but a choice to live calmly and freely, without being caught up in emotions that hurt ourselves and others. So when you feel hurt, instead of reacting immediately, try choosing silence. Allow yourself and others space to reflect on everything with calmness. Silence in such moments is not giving up, but forgiving, an act of compassion and kindness, so everything becomes lighter, and both you and the other person can move forward on the path of healing and growth. In every family, there are times when the atmosphere becomes tense, conflicts arise, and communication becomes difficult. In those moments, words cannot always solve the problem. Sometimes, silence becomes the means to soothe conflicts, creating a space where everyone in the family can listen and understand each other better. The Buddha taught that in every relationship, especially in families, silence is not only the absence of sound, but also a way to protect inner peace and help strengthen relationships. Silence in family relationships is a way to create space for harmony. In times when the family faces difficulties, arguments, or misunderstandings, words can become weapons that hurt each other. Hasty, thoughtless words can push relationships further apart and hurt the hearts of our loved ones. Instead of expressing all the negative emotions in our hearts, silence helps create a pause for everyone to think and understand the issue better. Silence in these moments is not indifference or avoidance, but respect and patience. When we do not rush to speak out in anger, we give ourselves and others a chance to think calmly, not be swept up in temporary frustration. The Buddha always emphasized the importance of listening in relationships. Silence in the family is a way for everyone to listen to each other more completely. Often in conversations, we get caught up in wanting to speak, explain, or even prove we are right. But truly, in those moments, listening is the most important thing. Silence is a way to open our hearts and receive the thoughts and feelings of others without being influenced by judgments or prejudices. When we remain silent and listen, we not only understand better what our loved ones are going through, but we also show respect and love for them. Silence also helps us avoid unnecessary words, things that when said may hurt others. In the family, we often love each other deeply, but sometimes the closeness makes us easily say things that hurt the other person. Silence is the method that helps us pause before our words flow out, allowing us to think carefully about what we want to convey. Silence does not mean complete silence, but mental silence, so we can sense the necessity of each word and know when it is truly useful for harmony in the family. In Buddhism, silence is part of the practice of mindfulness. When we know when to be silent, it is a sign of spiritual maturity. Silence helps us become people who can control our emotions, restrain ourselves, and most importantly, know when to stop to preserve peace in our hearts. Silence is also a way to avoid hasty words, hot reactions that may harm family feelings. The Buddha taught that mindfulness and silence are two elements that help us live a peaceful life. And in family relationships, they are the key to maintaining harmony and mutual love. In a family, it's not always the case that everyone agrees with each other. And there will definitely be times when each person has different opinions. Silence is not the rejection of these differences, but a way for each family member to reflect, accept each other's differences, and understand that it's not always necessary to have a debate to clarify every issue. Silence helps us respect others' space, refrain from judging or imposing our opinions, and instead, it fosters sincere acceptance. When we practice silence in these situations, love within the family is nurtured, and each person feels the understanding and empathy of their loved ones around them. When family relationships face challenges, silence is also an incredibly effective healing method. Sometimes, arguments and conflicts cannot be immediately resolved, and in such times, keeping silent helps calm the minds of everyone involved. Silence is a moment to reflect on what has happened, to contemplate, and to learn something valuable for ourselves. It also helps us avoid negative emotions and the pain of the argument. In silence, we can understand that each person has their own emotions and experiences, and the love within the family helps us overcome any difficulties. Silence in the family is also a way to create space for everyone to freely find peace within themselves. Sometimes, each family member needs a little personal space to quiet their mind, to think about life's issues. Silence creates a space for healing, allowing each person to recharge their energy and then return to the family with more love and deeper understanding. Therefore, silence is not about distance or abandonment in a family, but a method to maintain harmony and love. Silence helps us become more understanding, compassionate, and forgiving towards our loved ones. It allows us to preserve peace in our hearts and create space for sincere and profound communication. Let silence become a part of the love in the family so that each family member can feel each other's presence, mutual understanding, and peace in every moment spent together. Silence in communication can be a more powerful tool than any words. In tense situations, when people are arguing or facing differing opinions, sometimes silence can be the most profound art of persuasion. Silence is not just the cessation of speech, but a subtle choice, a way to create space for others to think and realize the truth without feeling imposed upon or attacked. I remember one time in a meeting, my colleague and I had disagreements about how to solve an issue. She was very determined in her viewpoint, while I had a different perspective. The arguments kept going, but I realized that the more we argued, the tenser things became. At that moment, I decided to remain silent. It wasn't that I had nothing to say, but I realized that sometimes not immediately refuting could open up an opportunity for the other person to think and find a solution on their own. I didn't respond. I just listened and created space for her to reconsider her viewpoint. After a few minutes of silence, she looked at me and admitted that she might have been too hasty. In the end, we found a more reasonable solution without further arguing. Silence is not avoidance or neglect, but a sign of respect for the other person. When we remain silent, we do not impose our thoughts on others, but give them time to recognize the truth for themselves, to face the issue in their own way. Sometimes, overly strong words can hurt others, but silence creates a calm space, allowing the other person to reflect on themselves without feeling pressure. A small story about the art of persuasion through silence that left an impression on me is about a literature teacher. Every time the class became noisy, instead of scolding the students, the teacher would just stand there silently until everyone started paying attention and quieted down. The teacher's silence wasn't weakness, but a way of conveying a profound message. The teacher understood that without words, the students would have to realize the respect they should have for the teacher and for one another. Silence was a way for the teacher to help the students reflect on their behavior, a persuasive method that didn't require the power of words. Especially in communication with people who have strong and hard to change opinions, silence becomes a more refined art of persuasion. When we try to persuade others with too many words, they may feel forced to agree with us. But when we know how to remain silent, we create space for them to think on their own, so they feel they have the right to make decisions without being imposed upon. In reality, silence in these situations is not a lack of decisiveness, but a smart strategy. Sometimes silence makes others feel empathy and respect, and in the end, they will realize that your idea truly has value. Once during a group discussion, I tried applying the art of persuasion through silence when a member had very strong differing views. Instead of reacting immediately, I just sat there quietly, observing and giving the person space to express their thoughts. Gradually, as the group continued discussing, that person came to realize that what they said might not be entirely correct and opened up to other ideas. By the end of the session, no one had to argue, and we came up with a better solution without using the power of words or confrontation. Silence is a way to create respect in communication. When we know how to be silent, we are respecting others and not disrupting their thoughts. Sometimes it is this silence that makes them feel heard and understood, something that words sometimes fail to do. Silence is not just stopping, but being fully present in each moment, creating a deep connection without the need to express too much. Therefore, in communication, silence can sometimes be a more powerful persuasion tool than any words. Silence is not weakness, but understanding and subtlety. It helps us stay calm in any situation, not letting emotions dominate, and more importantly, it creates space for others to think and realize the true value of the matter. In these moments, silence is not just about not speaking, but a profound persuasion, a way to make people feel the respect and empathy without needing to do anything more. In life, We sometimes forget that we need time to reconnect with ourselves and the world around us. Every day, we face a series of tasks, worries, and sometimes unavoidable stress. It is in these moments that silence is a wonderful gift we can give ourselves. Especially silence in nature not only helps us recharge our energy, but also allows us to feel life in every breath of the earth and sky, finding deep peace in the stillness of the universe. Silence in nature is a wonderful opportunity for us to reconnect with the most natural and pure things. The Buddha taught that tranquility and peace come from within, and nature is an essential part of this process. When we enter a cool forest or stand by the sea, listening to the sound of the waves crashing, we are not just listening to the sounds of nature, but also to our own hearts. Every breath, every gust of wind passing through the branches, or every bird singing above brings us a sense of peace, serenity that words cannot fully describe. When we spend time in silence in nature, all the troubles and worries of life slowly dissolve. Nature acts as a medium to quiet our souls, letting that silent space permeate every cell in our body, helping us feel the life around us. Every branch, every trail in the forest reminds us of the harmony of nature, of the connection between all creatures in the universe. In these moments, when there are no distractions from the outside world, we can hear the deep sounds of the universe, from the birds singing to the wind blowing through the leaves, like messages of peace, life in its many forms that we sometimes unknowingly pass by. The Buddha always emphasized that in order to understand the nature of things, we must listen not only with our ears, but with our hearts. Silence in nature is when we can detach ourselves from the noise of life, to listen and understand things that we usually do not notice. Every step on the earth, every breath in the vast space is an opportunity to reconnect with nature, and from there, gain a clearer understanding of life. Silence helps us feel the presence of the earth, of all things, and realize that every living being plays an important role in the flow of life. When we can stop, breathe deeply, and feel the breath of nature, we will realize that we are a part of this vast world, with no separation or division, but a connection in all things. In addition, silence in nature is also a great method for healing. In every step, in every quiet moment, we are like bathing in the pure energy of the earth and sky. Every branch, every stream, or every mountain brings us peace and strength. Nature is not only a place to seek stillness, but also a method for healing the soul. When we immerse ourselves in nature, worries and suffering gradually fade away, and in their place comes a sense of peace and lightness. Silence in nature helps us cleanse our minds from negative emotions, helping our souls become clear and ready to embrace new, better things. The connection with nature not only helps us heal, but also helps us understand life more clearly, about the peace we can find within ourselves. The Buddha taught that peace does not come from the outside, but from within each person. When we reconnect with nature, we realize that life around us is always ongoing, always changing and moving. Trees sprout new shoots, streams flow endlessly, and everything in nature is alive and full of vitality. In that silence, we can find peace in our hearts, understanding that life is a continuous process of change and movement, and every moment is a part of the great life. Silence in nature is also a way for us to learn patience and letting go. When sitting under the shade of a tree, watching the clouds drift by, we realize that everything has its time. The growth of a tree cannot be rushed. A stream cannot change immediately, and neither can we. Silence helps us understand that in life, not everything can change right away. Everything takes time, and acceptance is an important part of that process. When we learn patience from nature, we also learn how to let go of worries and unrealistic expectations to live more fully in the present. Finally, in the silence of nature, we find ourselves. Nature is where it helps us be still, helps us gain a clearer understanding of ourselves and the world around us. Silence in nature is an opportunity to return to ourselves, to find peace in our souls, and to feel life in every breath, every small gesture of nature. When we merge with nature, we feel the peace in every moment And from there, we can live a peaceful, gentle life filled with love. Therefore, take time to be silent in nature, to feel the life and peace in every breath of the earth and sky. When we reconnect with nature, we not only find healing, but also realize that every moment in life is precious and full of meaning. Let nature become a great teacher, teaching us stillness, patience, and compassion in every action and thought. In life, we cannot avoid sadness, loss, and those moments of feeling lost in our own emotions when facing the death of a loved one or irreplaceable loss. Often, no words can fully express that pain. In those moments, silence becomes a powerful healing method, helping us gradually accept and become familiar with the pain without needing to explain or justify anything. I remember a time when I lost my beloved grandmother. She was the one who had taken care of me since I was a child, always there whenever I needed to share something. Her death came suddenly, leaving me feeling lost and stunned. In the days that followed, everything around me seemed dull and meaningless. In the beginning, I didn't want to talk to anyone, nor did I want to explain my pain. Those around me tried to comfort me, but all I needed was silence. I didn't want to say anything, nor did I want to justify my feelings. I just needed to sit alone, letting the emotions settle in silence. This silence was not avoidance, but a way for me to face my pain. I realized that sometimes no words can ease the sadness. We don't need to explain. We don't need to find a reason for why things happen the way they do. Sometimes, all we need is to quietly feel and let the pain silently merge with us. Silence helped me feel my grandmother's presence in my heart, in the memories she left behind. Silence was the way I found comfort, a merging of the past and the present, of memories and reality. Silence in times of sadness not only helps us temporarily stop the chaotic thoughts, but also creates a space for us to heal ourselves. In silence, we don't need to express all our emotions. We only need to listen to our hearts. Silence helps us understand that sometimes acceptance is the first step in overcoming pain. We don't need to force ourselves. We don't need to articulate everything with words, but just live in that moment, accepting all emotions without the need for explanations. I also remember a story about a close friend of mine who lost her beloved father. In the days after her father's death, she didn't speak much, didn't cry much, just stayed silent in her room. I was worried and asked if she wanted to talk or share, but she smiled and said, "There are some pains that words cannot heal. I need some time to get used to it on my own." Her silence wasn't stubbornness or unwillingness to share, but a way for her to face her pain in the most natural way. After a while, she returned to life, not because she had forgotten the pain, but because she had learned to accept and live with it. Silence in sadness is not weakness, but inner strength. Sometimes we need moments of quiet to realize that no matter how great the pain, we can still move on, we can still walk, but sometimes that walk doesn't need to be rushed. Silence is the way to calm the waves within, helping us find peace without rushing to seek advice or comfort from the outside. One thing I realized in facing sadness is that we always tend to want to understand everything, to find a reason for every pain. But in reality, not all pain can be explained. Sometimes we don't need to know why, just that the pain will pass and we will find peace again. Silence is the way we accept the truth, not abandonment, but understanding that there are things in life that cannot be changed, and we must learn to live with them. In those moments of silence, we also find a deep connection with ourselves. Silence is not just the stopping of sound, but the opening of the heart to feel the emotions within, to fully live through what we are experiencing. Sometimes, it is precisely in that silence that we realize that no matter how difficult life may be, we can still continue. We can still love and cherish the precious moments we have. Therefore, when facing sadness, don't fear silence. Give yourself some time to live in silence, to feel the pain more gently, and to find peace in your heart. Silence will not make the pain disappear, but it will help you find the strength to move on, to live with the pain without letting it control you. When you are silent, you are not only facing sadness, but you are also finding a way to accept and heal from within. And in that silence, you will realize that you are strong enough to overcome all the challenges of life. In this life, when facing difficulties, challenges, or even the instability from the outside world, we often feel caught up in emotions, thoughts, and reactions we cannot control. However, one thing that the Buddha always teaches us is this: silence is not weakness or avoidance, but a profound mental strength, a peace that we can find within our hearts, even if the outside world is chaotic. Silence is truly an expression of inner strength, the ability to remain grounded in the storm, not allowing ourselves to be swept away by the turbulence of life. Silence is a conscious choice made by someone who understands that true strength does not come from reaction or hasty actions, but from the ability to maintain inner stillness. The Buddha taught that mindfulness is an essential factor in achieving inner peace. When we can remain silent, we are not swept into automatic reactions or fleeting emotions. Instead, we can observe everything clearly and wisely. Silence helps us feel inner peace, maintaining calm in our hearts, even if everything around us may be chaotic. Sometimes in life, we face stressful situations, arguments, or unforeseen challenges. In these moments, maintaining silence is not about giving up or avoiding the situation, but rather a way to protect ourselves from negative emotions and keep our minds clear. When we do not react immediately, when we remain silent and refrain from rushing into action, we give ourselves space to view the situation calmly and correctly. Silence in these moments helps us avoid being caught in chaos, preventing negative emotions from clouding our clarity and judgment. Silence is also a sign of spiritual maturity. When we can remain silent, we truly understand the power of words and their impact. Words can create karma and hurt others, but silence is a shield for our souls and our relationships with others. Silence in difficult situations is a way to preserve peace and avoid hurting others. It also helps us realize that not every thought needs to be spoken. Sometimes, silence is a way to show respect and love for others. The Buddha also taught that silence helps us see more clearly what is happening in life. When we keep silent, our minds are not disturbed by chaotic thoughts, but can calm down and perceive the subtle things around us. Silence allows us to experience peace in every moment, helping us recognize the important things we sometimes overlook due to being busy with life. In that silence, we can find peace without needing to search for it elsewhere. Silence is also a method to nurture our mental strength. When we can remain silent in the face of challenges, without letting emotions overwhelm us, we are training our ability to control ourselves. Mental strength is not about external display, but about inner resilience. When we are silent, we are truly seeking inner peace, and from that, we can face every challenge in life with calmness, unaffected by external events. Sometimes silence is the most wonderful healing medicine. When we face pain or hurt, comforting words or advice may not be enough to soothe the hurt in our hearts. But it is silence, the quiet presence of a loved one, that can ease the wounds in our souls. Silence is deep empathy, sharing without needing to speak empty words. When we remain silent, we not only listen with our ears, but with our hearts. And this is the way to heal wounds without the need for words. Silence in life also helps us feel the power of forgiveness. When we remain silent, we not only let go of anger, but also release past wounds, allowing our hearts to be free. Silence is a way to prevent us from getting stuck in negative emotions, not letting past events continue to harm us. Forgiveness is part of silence, a way for us to find freedom and peace within our hearts. In Buddhism, silence is also an important part of practice, helping us understand not only ourselves, but also the world around us. Silence helps us gain clearer awareness of the nature of life, of impermanence, and the constant changes. When we can remain silent in the face of life's upheavals, we will feel that everything has a reason, and peace only comes when we do not react hastily, but know how to let go and accept things as they are. Therefore, silence is a profound spiritual strength. When we know how to keep silent in difficult moments, When we do not let ourselves be swept into conflicts or negative emotions, we will experience peace within our hearts. This silence is not weakness or avoidance, but a way to maintain ourselves, to find inner strength and peace, no matter how chaotic the world outside may be. Silence helps us cultivate mindfulness, helps us understand more about the nature of words, emotions, and life. In that silence, we can find the strength to face all challenges and continue the journey of living a peaceful and free life. In every family, between generations, there are always differences in viewpoints, ways of thinking, and perspectives on life. Adults often wish to protect and guide the younger generation, while the younger generation is always seeking ways to express themselves and explore the world around them. Conversations between generations can become tense when each side tries to convince or impose their views. But in those moments, silence can create a wonderful space for understanding each other without forcing anyone to express their views or thoughts. I remember one time when I was a child, I really wanted to share my thoughts about the societal changes I was witnessing. I felt that the adults didn't understand me, didn't understand what I was going through. During a family meal, I began to talk about my feelings and the difficulties I faced in finding my identity and path. As soon as I started speaking, my father just listened, saying nothing. He didn't interrupt, oppose, or criticize me. He simply stayed silent, listening to the emotions I expressed. When my story ended, my father still didn't speak immediately. I felt a bit disappointed, thinking that perhaps he didn't care. But then, after a long while, my father spoke and said, "You are searching for your own path, and I understand that. I don't need to give advice or opinions right away, because sometimes simply being silent and listening is enough. You will find your own way to solve things." At that moment, I realized that my father's silence was not indifference, but a way of giving me space to express myself without being imposed upon or judged. That silence made me feel respected, and I realized I could find my own answers to the issues within me without rushing into advice. Silence between generations in a family can create a space filled with understanding and connection. When adults remain silent and listen, they not only help the younger generation feel respected, but they also create an opportunity for them to explore their own emotions and thoughts. Sometimes we don't need to offer advice or explain everything. Silence can be a warm action, showing understanding that words cannot fully express. I also remember sitting with my grandmother, who spoke very little. But whenever I faced difficulties or felt confused, she would always silently sit beside me. She didn't say anything, just quietly sitting there, looking at me, her eyes full of compassion and understanding. In those moments, I felt immense comfort, as if she was imparting calmness and patience without saying anything. Her silence made me realize that sometimes presence and listening can be more important than words. In a family, when we face differences between generations, silence is the way for us to find a deep connection. Adults do not always have to give advice, and the younger generation does not always need to argue or try to explain everything. Silence helps both sides understand each other without rushing to react or judge. Silence creates a peaceful space where adults can listen to the thoughts and feelings of the younger generation without feeling forced to express their opinions. And conversely, the younger generation also feels respected and has the opportunity to express themselves without criticism. Once, I witnessed a friend of mine, after a big argument with her mother about her career future, sitting in silence in her room for an entire afternoon. Her mother didn't rush to speak, nor did she force her to change her mind. She simply let her think in silence. After a long while, my friend realized on her own that the choices she was considering might not actually be the right fit for what she truly needed. Her mother's silence wasn't indifference, but a way of helping her realize and find her own path without too much intervention. Silence in communication between generations is not just the cessation of speaking, but the creation of space where everyone can feel respect and love. Silence in a family is not abandonment or distance, but a way for adults to help the younger generation explore and shape their own paths. At the same time, silence is also a way for adults to listen and understand more deeply the thoughts and feelings that the younger generation is experiencing. Therefore, in communication between generations, sometimes silence is the best way to connect and create understanding. When we know how to remain silent, we not only give others space to express their emotions, but also show unconditional respect and love. Silence can be a powerful language, a deeply persuasive method without needing to say anything. In life, sometimes words, advice, or explanations are not always necessary. There are times when, in stillness, we can find everything we need. As the Buddha taught, silence is keeping peace, a silent word, a peaceful life. It is a profound lesson about patience, self-control, and understanding the essence of speech and the power of silence. In moments of stress, fatigue, or heightened emotions, what we may need the most is not rushing to speak, but a little silence to allow our soul to rest, for our thoughts and emotions to settle, and for us to regain peace. Silence is not avoidance. It is a way for us to better understand ourselves, to listen to and feel the deep things that sometimes in the rush of life we cannot recognize. In silence, we learn tolerance, we learn mutual respect, and most importantly, we learn inner peace. When we are silent, we not only make life lighter, but also help ourselves cultivate mental strength to overcome any challenges, facing life with calmness and resilience. And in family relationships, in moments of love or conflict, silence becomes even more precious. Silence is the way for us to understand each other more, to listen to the hearts of our loved ones without needing to say everything, to share simple yet meaningful moments of peace. When we keep silent, it is not distance, but respect and love. In silence, family love can be nurtured and grown. Life always brings challenges, and there are times when we feel tired and helpless. But remember, silence is the mental strength that we can learn and practice every day. Silence is not weakness, but the strength to stay grounded in difficult times, a way for us to restore our energy, to reconnect with ourselves and with the nature around us. Remember that silence is not avoidance or running away. Sometimes it is the path to peace, deep connection, and spiritual growth. Silence is where we find peace in life, where all worries and fatigue disappear in stillness. I wish that, no matter the circumstances, you always find peace in your heart, find stillness, and the strength to face life with lightness and wholeness. Remember that keeping silent brings peace, and a silent word brings lifelong tranquility. Live a complete life, without rushing, without haste, but always knowing when to stop, to listen and feel, so that each day becomes one of peace and happiness.